Observing a moment of silence for Slim Shady. It's the Extended Play Podcast with Ian Tank.
It's season 5 of the Extended Play Podcast with your host Ian Tank. We are a music discussion show without the hipster snobbery. Today's episode for our return after a short hiatus. It was mid. We still have some content out there for you.
Yeah.
And speaking of mid, we had a lot of content out there for you in the meantime. We're going to start out with an album review. We do have some big ideas. There's going to be a more sort of solid structure to season 5.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a lot of, we promised you last season that we'd be talking about our own top 100 albums of all time. And we'll get into that starting next week. But this week we had to talk about the latest album from Eminem.
Yes.
Having talked about him extensively on the show, being from the Detroit area, we feel like it was only, it was only appropriate that we talk about the new Eminem album, which just came out on Friday.
Yeah, it has turned out to be a big fucking deal.
Has it? Okay. I've been on sort of like media blackout because I didn't want it to influence, but so I'm curious to hear.
I haven't looked at any of the critical assessments,
Okay.
but just the headlines of it's breaking Spotify records, and blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Yeah. So today we will talk about the new Eminem album, which is called The Death of Slim Shady,
parentheses, Coup de Grâce.
Coup de Grâce. Okay. So, if you're joining us for the first time, please like and subscribe. Turn on your notifications to find out when there's new episodes. We do this. This season will be one video episode a week. We're going to be exclusively video. If you're hearing this, the audio version of this podcast, please check us out on YouTube. Okay, you can see our lovely faces. And so let's get into it.
Yep.
Right.
I got an idea.
First impressions. Go for it.
No. So, how about this will be a thing we do now?
Yeah.
To determine who goes first for album reviews, we'll do rock, paper, scissors.
Okay.
All right. On 3?
Yep.
All right.
Rock, paper, scissors.
God damn it.
It's rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Take 2.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Oh, you fucker. All right.
Okay. All right. I'll go first. We won't get into it. Tank and I have particular scoring systems we use, but I'll get to the gist of it is that we go to 20 because we're twice as good as everybody else.
We're better.
Right. Yeah. So, I don't have a score. I'm going to be making the score up as I go along, which is fairly typical of how I run things. And Tank has his whole thing all set up ahead of time.
Spreadsheet.
That's right. Okay. So I've had a lot of time with this album, surprisingly, over the past 3 days. I've listened to it almost a half dozen times.
Wow.
Because I was worried that I was reacting to it too emotionally.
Okay.
And why I say that is because, not a surprise with an Eminem album. He's intentionally provocative. Right. He's trying to push buttons the entire time. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just responding to buttons being pushed.
Right.
That I was taking it as a piece of music, as a work of art, and the whole thing. I was taking the whole package. That I was getting the text and the subtext. And honestly, here, like 3 days into it, I'm still struggling with it a little bit. My overall impressions were, so this is where Tank and I differ a little bit in that I haven't been listening to Eminem at all since the Marshall Mathers LP. Yeah. I think I owned, so it's Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP,
then Eminem Show, and then it's Encore.
Right?
I lose track after that.
So Eminem Show was the last one I listened to. And that is a long
20 plus years.
Long time ago. So I had a lot of kind of catching up to do, and I was going to do it without, the benefit of like doing all the research because I wanted to come into it fresh.
Right.
And what I quickly realized was that a lot of what I really liked about Eminem when those first few albums came out are a lot about me being that age then. And the way my life has changed and the way I view music now is very different. And even though he's essentially doing a lot of what he did then, and intentionally so, right? Kind of putting to bed this whole Slim Shady part of his career, and maybe even his entire career. He also puts that out there that like he may be intentionally canceling himself. Is not where I'm at as a 48-year-old, dad. So overall, I was left very impressed at the wordplay, even knowing who he is.
Right.
It is and this is what I'm struggling with a little bit here is the dichotomy between how impressive the wordplay is and the sort of intellectually, sort of grammatically thoughtful and intentional delivery.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like he went to another level on vocabulary here
it's
also.
Very impressive.
Yeah. Like I think surreptitious is in there somewhere.
I mean, yeah. If you look at a chart of like how many words that have probably never been used in a rap song before, there's probably dozens of them in this one. So there's that on one end, which plays very intellectual to me, like someone who really considers their craft. And then you have the content itself, which I have many, many problems with. Even knowing that he is baiting me the entire time.
Right.
So the way I ended up feeling was that on this album, he has created a essentially false narrative that people are trying to cancel him for the shit he says. But he hasn't said it yet because what he's saying is on this album itself.
Right.
So it's happening simultaneously.
Well, or is he referring to his career?
He may be talking about his career, but in particular, he talks about the things that he's saying on this album that people are not going to like.
Right.
And I want to get into that right away. The things that he's talking about that he knows people will not like right away are extreme transphobia. There is I cannot get my head around what problem he has with little people.
I thought you were going to say the one thing that I thought was hilarious. I read a tweet someone wrote. It's like somewhere in heaven, Christopher Reeve is sitting around like, what the fuck did I do?
It is.
I think that's part of the joke is to go to someone as obscure as Christopher Reeve and keep doing it over and over again.
And over again. And I started a tally list of how many times he mentioned Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
And I listened to this multiple times. I came up with there are at least 8 separate mentions of Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
And that if he's mentioning him once, he's also going into detail about, and it's not like what a great actor this guy was, the guy who played Superman in 1978. It's just the fact that he was crippled, like he had a disability, like he got thrown off a horse and he was he was wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
Okay. So for whatever, inexplicably, he's super into making fun of little people, in making fun of people, of anybody who identifies as non-cisgendered. He, over and over, he goes after Gen Z generally. Like he kind of packages everybody, like anybody that has a problem with me is Gen Z, which I think is fucking bizarre to hear from a 50-year-old. It just sounds like get off my lawn. He goes after fat people who are overweight. Yep. He's anti-fat. He's anti-fat shaming, right?
Well, okay, but I think it's important to clarify when we say he, and I know this sounds silly, but within the context of my others, are we talking about Slim Shady or Marshall Mathers?
Right. And that's what I think. And that's why I think it's a false narrative. Right. So you are still committing this to record.
Correct.
Like, so to say that it's your worst, so to say Slim Shady is your alternate persona and he's the worst part of you, I get that. But then to put it on record, there is this line between fact and fiction that he straddles that is kind of difficult for me to navigate. And even if it's so I thought about this a lot, like, so what are the worst parts of my personality? If there's a Slim Shady to me, what are the kind of the worst thoughts, the ones that I'm embarrassed of and the ones that aren't maybe politically correct? They're nothing I would be ashamed of saying to anybody I know. I would say I struggle with this. I don't quite understand this and I want to know more about it. This is not what he's saying. He's saying this other side of me is very angry and very intolerant of these people. And his reasonings, there are so many flaws to me in his reasoning for why he should be angry at these particular group of people. If he even gives them, he doesn't give any reason that he's angry at little people.
Because I think he's actually not. Right.
But who the fuck cares if, like, that part was very confusing to me.
Yeah.
Like,
all right. I have some thoughts on that, but I'll save it for when
okay. So there was a lot of me that just could not get past this sort of intentional baiting of, and he talks, and he addresses it even. He says his Marshall Mathers persona and then his Slim Shady persona go back and forth. And he says, well, you're the guy who talked about that you were a bully And now you're bullying people and you're punching down. That's bullshit. Why would you do that? So he actually admits that he's doing it.
Right.
That doesn't, to me, absolve him from saying such a bunch of stupid shit.
Right.
To me. So overall, there were a number of tracks that were going really well, where the verbal dexterity was incredibly impressive, where the I was impressed at some of the choruses where like he will sing his own chorus, or even if he has a guest person on, that they're catchy, right? That you end up thinking about them afterwards, you kind of singing them to yourself. The beats, some of the beats were really great. I noted down like I think, well, the first one, Renaissance, I thought the entire track was great, but like Lucifer, Fuel, Head Honcho, there were a number of tracks that had really solid production on, really cool hip hop beats. So you'd have this verbal dexterity and this ability to just eviscerate MCs and talk about how amazing he is, which is what is really fun to me about hip hop. And then you have the complete other side of it, which is just like, I'm in this battle against my ego. And it's this Slim Shady character, and he says all this questionable shit, and I don't like it, but he's held me captive, and he's why I'm successful. And that's what I had a huge problem with. So it took me over and over again. I'm like, not in my head. I dig this. I like this. And then all of a sudden he says some shit about Lizzo being fat.
Right.
And how I mean, it's just not, but it's not fucking funny, dude.
I know. But I guess, so I guess that's this. I feel like this was his point, right? To put it out there and not to say what's right or wrong, is to talk about. Well, again, I'll save it for when I give my in-depth thing.
Yeah.
But I do think like the provocation is intentional to have a discussion. What's open to interpretation is to what extent is that abused for cheap laughs?
Sure. Yeah.
And that's an open question.
Yeah. And I just kept thinking, who is the audience that thinks this is funny? I also thought that over and over again. If you're a hip hop head and you're looking for the next Eminem album, like, are you that immature that you're laughing at fat jokes and jokes about little people and jokes about trans people and about Caitlyn Jenner? He mentions Caitlyn Jenner. Did I already say that? No,
it's got to be a lot.
I have 8 times, but it's more than that. It's way more than that, because I also have trans/pronouns as 11 times, fat shaming 3 times, the word PC 3 times. He says woke at least 6 times, where he makes fun of people with disabilities. Christopher Reeve, I already said. He uses the R word for people who have sort of cognitive disabilities 7 times. Talks about Gen Z. There's 4 mentions of school shootings. Like, it's just, to me, it's cheap. And for someone who is that big of a talent, it just seems like a waste of time to talk about. To me, that's where I ended up with. I'm not interested in hearing the worst part of someone talk about their opinions on things that are, to me, fairly cut and dry, which is, we should treat people with respect and kindness. And call me, and he gets into the woke culture and PC culture, and you can call me all those things and I'm fine with it. Yeah. But it is kind of who I am. And right. Like, yeah. Anyway, so I ended up feeling very, very, very disappointed in the subject matter and having it ruin this album for me. So there's some funny bits. He's got a great sense of humor in a lot of different ways. He's the wordplay. He's turning phrases inside out very often and using, like, he's chopping up words and having a weird rhyme scheme and the double entendres. He's incredibly adept at. I mean, especially after listening to some of the bullshit hip hop we've listened to in the course of this show, it's crazy how talented this dude is. But that's what I kept thinking of, is like, you are ruining it by just being provocative for the sake of being provocative, when anyone can be provocative. It's not hard. It's not hard to say hateful shit, and he does it. So,
but I thought that was the point of the album, right? Is to say that it's copping to it, that he's acknowledging that his early success was built on that.
Do you need to spend a whole album doing that, though?
That's debatable, right?
Then I guess that's my opinion. Is that no, you don't. Like, you can acknowledge it, but say I'm beyond this and take the high road. He definitely does not take the high road. Yeah. So, okay. Do I get into my score, or do we do that at the end?
No, you could. I think you could go ahead. And
Okay. All right. I'm gonna make it. All right. I go on. I have 3 categories: originality, repeatability, and cohesion. Let's go backwards. Cohesion. It is a cohesive album for the most part. I will say towards the end, and he called it a concept album, right? But
in a tweet he did, I was going to mention that earlier.
Yeah.
So he mentioned that he specifically on the day it came out told people you have to listen to this in order.
Yeah.
You can't listen to it on shuffle.
Yeah.
Which is very true.
Is it?
Yeah. Because the whole hostage taking and
I just okay.
well, I mean, come on, you got to give him that.
No,
It's pretty clear that it's like the Slim Shady character, and there's literally at a point where he kills the character, and now the
Okay.
character's dead.
okay.
If you go in order.
And
Yeah.
right, which makes a certain amount of sense because by the time you get to track 14,
Yeah, Guilty Conscience 2 is
is
when
the end of it.
Yes.
Right. And that's where the album becomes listenable to me. What Head Honcho, Temporary, so Temporary and Somebody Save Me are the ones that are really heartfelt. There's the one,
Yeah.
what Temporary is about. It's a letter to his daughter, Haley,
Yeah.
after he dies. It's a little soft on actual content, but the emotion is there, and it's a message to his daughter after he goes. And then Somebody Save Me is a very similar
Yeah.
expression that has Jelly Roll on it. Anyway, he calls Jelly Roll fat in the song before that, and then has him guest on the next track, which
I think is telling.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. So anyway, okay. So cohesion. Okay. So now I'm having a second thoughts about this because if this is a concept album and he does make this clear break after this track, then he's done what he's tried to do to an extent, because Renaissance, the first track, has none of that hateful shit in it. It's just a hip hop track. And he does have other songs in there that are like, maybe they have one Caitlyn Jenner mention rather than 10. Okay. So cohesion, I will give it let's say a 9.
I say you don't have to like it, but it is cohesive.
It is very cohesive. All right.
This is what happens when we make our categories and we regret having to stick to them later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Repeatability. I will never listen to this again.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So this is and okay. So that being a scale for me doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's like almost like, are you gonna listen to it a lot or not at all?
Well,
is not at all a 0?
I mean, but I think you could almost make it a literal 1 for 1. Like if I'm going to listen to it once, it gets a 1.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm going to listen to it 10 or more times,
Yeah.
then it's a 10. Like I
Yeah.
think you could almost treat it that way.
Yeah. I will never listen to any of this album again. So that is, yeah.
Could be a 1.
Let's do a 1.
Sure.
Originality. Okay. So this is a tough one because there is nothing that sounds like this. Right? There's no hip hop that sounds like this. There's no any genre that sounds like this. And then I also, when I talk about originality and in past reviews, I talk about like, is it an original, in their catalog? It is not. It is the same tropes, except he's saying that it's over. Right? I'm no longer going to do this.
Yeah, I mean the Slim Shady aspect, yeah, that's nothing new. The idea that it's this schizophrenic discussion between the two throughout an album, that's a new concept.
Yeah. Is it? I feel like there's been that before. No, they've never talked to each
That's
other.
why it was the Slim Shady LP and then the Marshall Mathers LP.
Okay. All right. Originality. Let's say for me, 5.
Sure.
I was not shocked at anything I heard. Like this sounds like an Eminem album, right? But it does not sound like anything else in the genre or anything else I'm listening to. If I average these out, that comes to a 15 divided by 3, which is a 5.
That's a 5er.
That is too high for me. I really, really have a problem with this album. I really think, I mean, I spent a lot of time listening to it, and I regret that I spent that much time listening to it.
Well, all right. How about this? You can temporarily, that's your mathematical result.
It is.
I will explain my rationale.
Yeah.
And then you can take that time to consider what you want to give it and maybe lower it from the 5 with a
Or raise it. Who knows?
administrative change.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
Tentatively a 5.
Yeah, tentatively 5. As I said, if there are tracks you want to check out, like I would just do a hard pass on this album. I would not listen to it if you don't have to, if you're not doing it as like an exercise for a podcast. The song Renaissance, the very first track is very promising and is really great. Head Honcho is really good. The songs where he has guest artists on it, the one with Big Sean and BabyTron.
Toby. Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I don't know who Big Sean and like
They're both Detroit MCs.
I know they are.
Yeah.
And I know Big Sean is really successful. And BabyTron is more, I think, more up and coming.
Yep.
I don't listen to hip hop enough to know the difference between the two, but they both have very solid verses.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a very good track. So I would recommend starting at Head Honcho and working your way down.
This would be a great EP.
It would be a great EP. Yes. So that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, I felt very differently about it.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah. So I, the way I write these out now, I have my 4 categories I'll get to in a minute, but I also, as of lately, have taken to putting like a headline on it to kind of give a 1 sentence or 1 paragraph summary. So for this one, I'm saying it's a mature, honest take on trying to reconcile who he is and what made him famous, admitting weakness and uncertainty while proving he's still at the top of his and the rap game.
Okay.
All right. So, I think that the whole point, I think the beauty of this is that what I'm about to say and what E said, neither one is wrong. And it's the discussion, the thing he wanted to provoke was the discussion.
Okay.
So let's start with this because I have a whole lot of more technical things, but sure. I guess to address the points you brought up.
Yeah.
If we think that these things are all the terrible things, I would argue, number one, they're purposely cartoonish. I think when you're genuinely hateful, it doesn't come off as this over the top, inciting these old, tired archetypes like the Caitlyn Jenner and Lizzo is fat.
Okay.
And I feel like it's almost intentionally cartoonishly bad.
Okay.
Because if it had true venom behind it, I think it would be much more detailed and less using these tired tropes.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But if we are to believe that it is not just a persona, if it's not, then Marshall Mathers truly thinks these things, the person. And I 100% don't think that's the case.
Wow. Okay.
So Elton John is his AA sponsor. They're very close friends.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a homophobic or transphobic person.
Okay.
Right. For by all accounts, Haley Jade, his daughter, is a wonderful young woman. Well-balanced, not affected by all this.
Right.
He raised 3 girls, only one of which was his, the other 2,
Right.
And so I just don't. And then it goes going back to like the BET cipher from, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe, where he did this. It was just, you might remember, it was all black and white. It was kind of semi-famous at the time. It was during the BET Awards. He did this black and white cipher, a cappella, no background. But at the end, he basically says, I'm drawing a line right here. And if you're pro-Trump, fuck you. I don't want you to listen to my music. I'm not for you.
Okay.
Literally a black and white video and a black and white statement.
Okay.
For a lot of people that talk about what they believe and they try to come off as politically correct, whatever, I have to think a non-negligible portion of Eminem's audience are white kids who are MAGA type or leaning that way.
Absolutely.
So to come out and be like, I hate this, I hate you, don't be my fan, is a money where his mouth is kind of thing. I didn't see a whole lot of people doing that. A whole lot of people try to play both sides of the fence to maximize their money.
Sure.
So, and there is no right or wrong here, right? So I think ultimately what I'm getting is the perception of this album is just going to come down to, do you buy it or not, right? So if you do buy it, you're going to think this is a brilliant artistic statement. If you don't buy it, you're going to think it's just an excuse to say retard a lot.
Which he says a lot.
Of course.
Yeah.
But that's, again, it's just a how you feel about what the truth is. And there's no right or wrong there. And I don't even know. I'm not friends with the Marshall Mathers. I'm guessing and you're guessing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we don't know.
Yeah.
I give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying you're not giving him the benefit of the doubt. You're going on what you've heard.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I think neither one of us is right or wrong. But I think what's kind of funny and fascinating is this is exactly, in a way, I think what the album was trying to address is what is real, what am I, blah, blah, blah. Now, the one twist that I do believe in, that I think was intentional is, so let's say that you're Eminem, right? And you come up to fame by saying and doing these things. Largely a huge part of what made him Eminem is, aside from the skill, of course, the shock value of the things he was saying.
Okay, so can I interject here just for a second?
Yeah.
what I found is that in going backwards in his catalog, which I did a little bit after when I started listening to this, is that a lot of the objectionable shit he was saying had to do with cartoonish violence against very often pop culture figures.
Yeah.
That was the thing, that he's going to kill his ex-wife.
Right.
He talks about violating his mom, and like there's all this awful shit he talks about over and over again. It is not, if I recall correctly, targeting specific groups that are targeted over and over again in our culture. He does. There's many homophobic slurs early on, and then he addresses the backlash from having heard that, and then the whole Elton John thing. But this seems to me it's even less cartoonish, because he's not out murdering people,
right?
But you can make a reasonable guess that he thinks, like, the specific things he says about, like, well, cognitively disabled people don't know that they're cognitively disabled, so you can make fun of them. So it's an excuse.
Right, but I guess that's the whole point, right? It's like, that's the Slim Shady part, saying that. If you think it's just an excuse to say it and make fun of those people, then that's what you think.
I don't understand even bringing it up.
I don't know that I do either. I don't. But I think, so the one thing that I thought was very apropos, and he specifically mentions it, is South Park. He mentioned South Park.
I thought that was actually a good point too.
So it's a great example.
Yeah.
South Park does all of this.
They do it. Yeah, they do a lot of it.
Timmy, Cartman in the Special Olympics, Token, all the transgender stuff.
Yeah.
They do all of this, and Matt Stone and Trey Parker get no blowback.
Yeah, because
it is satire. It's taking the piss out of American culture.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, is like, why do they get a pass and Eminem doesn't?
Right.
So, but again, it comes down to, because again, the history of South Park and the longevity of it and whatever else, and our familiarity with okay, this is clearly what they're doing, and it's brilliant social satire.
Yeah.
I'm giving Eminem the benefit of the doubt that he's doing the same thing. What I think the truth is somewhere between. My guess, and the reason why I think this album has this confessional tone, is he was that guy, and he's not that guy anymore.
Okay.
So it's an apology of sorts as well. And that's where, towards the end of the album, where he basically says, I was bullied and beat up by these two kids in junior high, and I was scared, and this was my defense mechanism.
Right. Is to punch down.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that the album I don't think it's coincidence that we got this album when he's 51 years old. Maybe 52 now. I don't know. I lose track. And, he watched his daughter get married a couple months ago, right? Album was probably already in the can or close to it, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think it's coincidence. I think it's like, look, you're a grown ass man with daughters you're proud of,
right?
And yet you're known for this kind of stuff. Yeah. How do you reconcile it? What do you do about it?
I'll tell you how you reconcile it.
Yeah.
Is you lean in to the fact that you're one of the greatest MCs that's ever lived.
Yeah. So agreed. But I think that's almost, I mean, I don't know if he would come out and say it, but it's like, I don't know there's much to prove anymore.
Probably not.
Right. So like I forgot which track. It's early in the album. He basically says, hey, everyone, he lists all the people he's feuded with.
Yeah.
And says, it's over. I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
I have a feeling, and I think we can have an agreement here. You put Eminem on probation.
Okay.
I think what's going to happen is the next album will be maybe his attempt at doing all the things you're saying he should do.
I mean, I hope so.
Right. So I'm very curious to see what happens from here.
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, let's say if you were taking music out of it, if you were ashamed of your youth, right? You did shit in your 20s you're really not proud of. How do you reconcile it, come to terms with it? Even more so if those are the things that made you famous and wealthy.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I could be giving him too much credit. You could be giving him not enough credit.
Maybe it's somewhere in the middle.
Reality's probably somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
But because I've always been a stan, so to speak, I give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I think that, I think he's been pretty consistent about his values and in real life, what's important to him and what he does. In terms of, giving back and trying to do the right thing and being a great father and all this stuff.
Sure.
But who also can resist the past to make up a fake persona to just say nasty shit, right? Yeah. So there can be an element to that too. Yeah. Although even then, so with, we've talked about this, I'm extremely liberal, right? But I do think that there are a lot of inconsistencies on what is acceptable and what's not. right? So Eminem can't say these things, but other people can in different positions because, oh, well, they can say it, he can't.
Yeah.
That's a very dicey thing. And I think he's also trying to point that out. Also, I can't say this, but other people can say it, right? Whatever. We're not going to solve that here in this podcast, but I think that was part of, I think it's a combination of being provocative is what he does, apologizing for, look, that was who I was, and I'm not real proud of it, and I'm here to talk about that. And also taking just as a social, not experiment, but just to basically point out some of the hypocrisy of who gets to say what, who gets to get away with what. I think it's a mix thereof. So, anyway, my scale is I have lyrics, presentation, musicianship, and songcraft. Lyrics, it's a 10. I don't know how, content aside, right? You know, like you mentioned with the wordplay and the dexterity and all these things, you know, like a couple examples, like, you know, about to show your ass while I'm still a pain in it. You want to know how I do it? I can't explain this shit. Mechanic's brain with a pinch of Big Daddy Kane in it, but I can show you the ropes till you get the hang of it. There's like,
it's pretty great.
There's subtext everywhere.
Yeah, that's on the first track.
Yeah. And why does it feel like I'm always being tortured? The bad apple spoils the whole orchard. Used to read comic books to learn more words because deep down I'm a dork, just a core nerd, meaning nerd to the core till I'm core nerd, then I'm the coroner. Right. So again, I think there's an aspect too of like, not boredom, but like getting into these social experiments and stuff. Just like, he's the best MC. It's obvious. And like, what else are you going to do? What's he going to do? Get on an album for like, hey, it's 30 years later. I'm still the fucking best MC. You know? So anyway, so 10, just because of the even if not the content, the quality. Presentation, I have a 9 because the production is sharp. The album is laid out in the way to tell a story. It does that. You know, how it's received is up to you, but it does what it's intended to do. I actually thought a few too many guest slots and novelties. Maybe try to shoehorn in some of his buddies.
And I thought his choice was weird. And I wonder if there are a bunch of tracks they recorded for this out. I mean, I don't know. If you're one of the greatest MCs of all time and you've got all these guys in your back pocket and you're talking to Dre on the record, but you never hear Dre, right? Like, why is it White Gold and Dem Joints and Sly Piper are your guests and not fucking Kendrick Lamar or whoever, right? Like that was curious to me.
Yeah.
But I agree. It was weird. Some songs were like majority somebody else.
Like Bizarre has a verse at the end of one of the songs that I think it's might even Guilty Conscious, but it's like, okay. I mean, clearly doing a solid to his buddy, but whatever. Musicianship, I give an 8. It's kind of hard on hip hop albums because, you know, I think the beats were solid and clean. If anything, a little stock.
But few of them sounded very similar.
Right. But I think that may have been a conscious choice to keep the focus on the lyrics, right? Because if this is the project you're going for, you're not trying to do Kanye level beats. It's about the content of the lyrics. You don't want to distract from the lyrics.
Yeah. And if you're creating a vibe for the whole thing and it's a story, it makes sense to have everything be on this kind of the same note.
Right.
Yeah.
Songcraft, I give it a 10 because, again, I can't dictate how people feel about it, but the album does what it sets out to do and delivers individually enjoyable songs for the most part. Again, this is all predicated on that you're not offended by the lyrics.
Right.
But I don't know. I guess I just have a hard time swallowing that Eminem is this terrible person. And he's using this as an excuse.
I don't care if he's a terrible person. I think it's just a waste of my fucking time to hear people say bad shit about people who can't defend themselves. It's just stupid. It's stupid. It's juvenile. You're a 50-something-year-old man. Get a fucking life. All of these things being true. His past, reconciling with the fact that he was that person he isn't anymore now. Regardless, you put this shit on track for eternity. It never goes away. And you said all this shit, whether it's in tongue in cheek or whatever. And anyway,
but that's why I agree. You could argue on did it need to happen? Right? Will it be a regrettable part of his catalog? And I think that's what time will tell.
Maybe.
I want to see what comes next.
Yeah.
Because if it's a reconciliation, a call to arms for unity and whatever else, I honestly think he's doing this to clean the slate and say, don't talk. The new Eminem, the next Eminem album is going to be a wise old man.
Okay.
Right. So if that happens, I think this looks much better in context.
Okay.
If it doesn't, then it really comes off as an excuse to shock
hateful.
people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all that said, that adds up to a 9 for me. I for the Go Find tracks, I have Temporary, which again, very touching, a little schmaltzy at times, but I think
Yeah.
but heartfelt.
I agree.
And certainly refreshing palate cleanser after all the
Yes.
Guilty Conscious 2, which I think is very cleverly done, and because Guilty Conscious 1 was Eminem and Dr. Dre as his conscious, now it's Eminem or Marshall Mathers and Slim Shady, and Fuel, which I think is just one of the of the earlier tracks that are just in the midst of this Slim Shady thing.
Yeah, I have a star next to that one too.
And for Skip, I have Somebody Save Me. I thought it was terrible. I know what he was. I know what he was going for. I feel like especially with Houdini doesn't really fit that much on the. It does in the sense that it's but thematically it kind of doesn't.
I agree.
But I feel like this is part of the business aspect of it. I feel like M sits down and it's like, all right, I'm going to do what I got to have 2 or 3 huge singles.
Okay.
And I feel like Somebody Save Me is just so obviously written to be a big single.
Okay. Big
name guest guy.
Yeah.
Does the chorus.
Yeah.
Normally Skylar Grey takes that spot, but this time it's Jelly Roll.
Right.
Whatever. So I give it a 9.
Okay.
And assuming if so it's at best a 14, unless you've whatever you want to adjust it to.
I'm just gonna do a
executive override.
Yeah, but let's move that down to a.
You might as well go to a 3.
I'm going to a 3.
I figured you would.
Because there is some artistic merit buried in there somewhere.
If nothing else, for the lyrical dexterity.
Yeah, I'm voting with my conscience here. Yeah.
You're guilty conscious?
I'm not guilty about, I believe in this and I'll believe this 100 years from now. It's not for me. That's what it comes down to. Listen to it. Let us know in the comments what you think about it. This could be a great discussion in the comments. We'd love to hear about it. I haven't read any of the reviews of it. I'm sure it's all over the place. Probably a lot of what we just did here.
Probably. Right? I bet it'll be a very divisive review.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy we have very different reviews for once.
It is nice.
I felt like every time we were doing 8 and 7.
Yeah. And we were also picking things that we thought we'd mostly like.
Yeah, that's true.
And this one I really had no idea because I haven't listened to them in a while. Yeah.
And I didn't, honestly, I was really pleasantly surprised. I expected it to be pretty bad.
Okay.
Because I haven't been buying or streaming Eminem albums as they come out for a long time.
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate the catalog. I respect the man, so I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed the album. Again, I took a mental vacation on the lyrical content.
Okay.
Right. So I didn't engage with it in that way. So I just enjoyed it.
Okay.
But
yeah, let us know what you think, please. Let us know in the comments. If you're on one of the, if you're not watching the video version, which you should be, Spotify just announced they have comments on individual episodes now. So you can comment on the episode. So do that if you're over there. Otherwise, let us know at contact@extendedplaypod.com. Great season coming up. We're really, really excited about a long-term, a series of episodes we're going to do on the top 100 albums of our lifetime. So buckle up for that.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be really good. And we've thought about it
a lot. Yeah. There's been, I will detail, I'll make a PowerPoint presentation.
You should. Absolutely.
To detail how we came to it, but a lot of work, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And I'm actually very proud of the list we're going to present because we talked a lot of shit and now we're prepared to back it up and say, yeah, we do have a list and it's better than your fucking list. And fuck you. Just because. I'm coming for you, bitch.
We are coming for you.
Yeah.
If you are a disaffected viewer,
come here.
We got you.
We got you.
Come into our loving arms.
First of all, notice our face doesn't take up 70% of the fucking screen. Okay? And I'm not wearing a stupid plaid whatever shirt to tell you what the score is.
Look at how many times we smiled and laughed.
Yeah. And and we're enjoying ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you know what? You know what else we don't do? I'll fucking tell you. You know what I gave it? A 9. You know what he gave it? A 3. I'm feeling a soft 9, hard 8.
Transition.
Yeah. Fuck you.
I won't go that hard, but anyway. If you want more of this, this is our thing, right? Yeah. We don't do a whole lot of research usually. Coming up, we've done a whole lot of research, and I think you'll really like the episodes we have coming up. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you next time around.
Except